Once upon a time, there were two frogs who lived in a big garden pond. Now, these frogs were best friends, but they were very different from each other. One frog was a happy-go-lucky kind of guy, who spent his days basking in the sun and having fun. And the other frog was he was always pessimistic, always complaining about something or the other, and he never wanted to take any risks. One day, the frogs were hanging out by the pond when they saw a big juicy worm squiggling around in the mud. The happy-go-lucky frog immediately started drooling. Worms were his favorite food, and this one looked absolutely delicious. But the worried frog just shook his head. "Don't even try it," he said. "I've heard that those worms are poisonous. If you eat them, you might get sick and die." The happy-go-lucky frog rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on, you worry too much. A little poison never hurt anyone, and I'm sure this worm tastes amazing. Just wait till I try it." With that, the happy-go-lucky frog lunged for the worm. But before he could grab it, a hungry bird swooped down from the sky and snatched it up in its beak. "See? I told you," the worried frog said smugly. "That worm was poisonous, and now you're gonna die a horrible death." The happy-go-lucky frog stared at him in disbelief. "You're the horrible one for ruining my dinner," he retorted. "And besides, I'm not dying. Sure, I got scared when the bird attacked me, but wasn't that adrenaline? That's what you get when you're about to die." But then I felt something else. Something warm and tingly spread through my whole body. It was like being on fire, but in a good way. And after that, I didn't feel anything at all. It was almost like an out-of-body experience. Then I saw my body fall into the water with the worm still in my mouth, and I thought to myself, well, here goes nothing. But then I opened my eyes and I was right back here watching you complain about everything as usual. The worried frog was shocked. He had never heard of a frog surviving a bird attack before, let alone one that was supposedly poisonous. So he asked the happy-go-lucky frog to tell him everything about what happened after he was attacked. And the more he listened, the more his eyes grew wide with wonder. When the happy-go-lucky frog finished his story, the worried frog couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. He had never experienced anything like the things the happy-go-lucky frog described. Not even close. All he ever did was hang out by the pond and complain about how boring his life was. "I want some excitement too," he admitted. "I want to see what it feels like to be on fire and have an out-of-body experience." The happy-go-lucky frog smiled. "Well, you're in luck because tomorrow we're gonna go looking for another worm to eat, and I bet there are plenty of poisonous ones hiding in the garden. Are you in?" The worried frog hesitated. On one hand, he really wanted to feel what the happy-go-lucky frog had described. But on the other hand, he was really scared of birds. They were huge and scary, and their beaks were like metal hooks. The happy-go-lucky frog must have read his mind because he said, "Hey, if you don't want to do this, it's totally fine. I don't want to force you, but you gotta understand. It only takes one bite of a poisonous worm to have the experience of a lifetime. Don't get me wrong, hanging out by the pond is fun and all, but it can get pretty stale after a while. You know what I mean? Sometimes you gotta spice things up a bit." The worried frog sighed. He knew that the happy-go-lucky frog was right. His life had become stale. He had been hanging out by the pond every day for so long that he had forgotten what it was like to do anything else. Plus, he was tired of being scared all the time. He wanted to feel brave for once, even if it meant risking his life. So he took a deep breath and said, "Okay, I'll do it. Let's find a poisonous worm and end this misery once and for all." The next day, the frog set off to find a new worm to eat. This time, though, the worried frog was the one leading the charge. He had done a lot of thinking overnight, and he realized that he couldn't keep living in fear forever. He needed to face his fears head-on and conquer them. And what better way to do that than by eating a poisonous worm? As they were searching for worms, the happy-go-lucky frog noticed something strange. The worried frog wasn't worried at all. In fact, he was acting like a completely different frog. He was confident and brave and excited. The happy-go-lucky frog couldn't believe his eyes. Was this really the same worried frog he had known his whole life? They eventually found a big juicy worm, and the worried frog wasted no time in lunging for it. The happy-go-lucky frog watched with bated breath as the worried frog ate the worm. Would he have an out-of-body experience like he had? Would he finally get a chance to feel something other than fear? But unfortunately, nothing happened. The worried frog ate the entire worm without a single thing happening to him. He was starting to think that the happy-go-lucky frog had made the whole thing up when suddenly he felt a little dizzy. Then he started to feel that same warmth spreading through his body. It was like being on fire, but in a good way. Then he blacked out. When he woke up, He found himself lying in the grass with the happy-go-lucky frog staring at him with a worried expression. "Are you okay? How are you feeling?" the happy-go-lucky frog asked frantically. The worried frog looked around. Where was he? Why was the sky spinning? What had happened? And then he remembered the worm. Could it be, had he actually had an out-of-body experience? He looked over at the happy-go-lucky frog and said, "I feel like I'm floating." The happy-go-lucky frog's face lit up. "Really? Do you remember what happened after you ate the worm?" he asked hopefully. The worried frog closed his eyes and thought back. He remembered the warmth, the dizziness, and then nothing. But just as he was about to tell the happy-go-lucky frog that nothing happened, he felt it again, that same tingle spreading through his body. Only this time it was stronger. He could feel himself leaving his body, just like the happy-go-lucky frog had described. He opened his eyes and gasped. Everything was blurry and distorted, like he was looking at the world through a funhouse mirror. He could feel himself rising above his body, and as he floated higher and higher, he could see the garden from a new perspective. He saw the pond where he and the happy-go-lucky frog had spent so much time, and he saw the birds that he had always been afraid of. But most importantly, he saw the happy-go-lucky frog staring up at him with a look of pure joy on his face. The worried frog had never felt anything like this before. It was terrifying, yes, but it was also exhilarating. He was scared, but he was also excited. He was nervous, but he was also thrilled. As the worried frog continued to rise above his body, he could hear the happy-go-lucky frog calling out to him. "Look at me! I'm flying!" he shouted, his voice filled with glee. "I can fly." And then the worried frog did something that surprised him more than anything else. He laughed. He laughed until his stomach hurt, and tears streamed down his face. He didn't want to go back to his body. He wanted to stay up here and fly with the birds. He wanted to feel the wind beneath his arms and the sun on his face. He wanted to be free. At that moment, the worried frog realized that he had been wrong all along. Life wasn't supposed to be stale and boring. It was supposed to be full of adventure and excitement. And even if that meant facing his fears, he wouldn't trade it for the world. As the worried frog continued to float up into the sky, he knew that he would never forget this feeling. He would carry it with him for the rest of his life, and it would remind him that no matter how scared he was, he could always be brave. Because as long as you fight, there is hope.